Hello, Bondi Podcast listeners. The guest on this episode is Mairead Ball. Now, Mairead is a Vedic meditation teacher at the Bondi Meditation Centre, and she also specialises in Vedic Astrology. In this episode, we talk about Mairead's journey from the corporate world to becoming a Vedic meditation teacher, and Mairead tells us a little bit about her teacher training, which actually took place during COVID. We talk about Vedic astrology, what it is, why it's important, and how it can help people. And then at the end of this episode, Mairead actually does a Vedic astrology reading on me, so stay tuned to see what she had to say. I hope you enjoy this episode, which is sponsored by Remoti and Chief Nutrition, but I'll tell you a bit more about the both of them later. We've got some really good deals for our listeners. Remember to give us a follow on Instagram at the Bondi Podcast to stay up to date with all of our guests and episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll find all of our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Cheers! Mairead, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming to spend the evening with me and not Freddie, your newborn. I really appreciate that.
It's a pleasure to get away from nappies and sleep routine conversations.
But it was a big breakthrough today for Freddie.
Yeah, Freddie said mama. I'm so excited. And he partially crawled with one leg dragging behind him, which was a very special day.
That is a big day. Any sign of dada yet? Or?
No sign of dada, so he started on that mission this evening.
Oh yeah, that's well. You're here.
Yeah.
Matt's at home with Freddie, being like dada,
Dada. Exactly. But I would have resented him very much if he went dada before mama. So I'm happy now. He can say whatever he wants.
Happy days. Well, thank you for coming in for a chat. Where I'd kind of like to start the conversation tonight is Mairead that worked in the corporate space.
Yeah.
Because I've only ever known you as Mairead, the Vedic meditation teacher / Vedic astrology specialist.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to sort of that period of your life, Mairead? Like, what did you do in the corporate world?
Yeah, so it's weird now because I'm like the most spiritual person you could ever imagine. And when I was in corporate, I wasn't like that at all. I was wearing all the suits and the heels and, full makeup and in negotiation talks and everything like that. But I was using the same skills, weirdly, as I'm using now. So I started in events management in the UK, working as an event manager for the largest venue in the UK, the Excel Centre, and ran big events, corporate events, worked on the Olympics, which was amazing, and worked at Man United. I worked at Old Trafford on Champions League, running like hospitality suites for the players. So I have a signed Sir Alex Ferguson Man United shirt.
No way.
With Mairead written on the back of it. So that's pretty cool.
Sorry, did you get to meet Sir Alex?
Yeah.
What was he like?
A very composed, nice, humble man.
Oh my goodness.
And a load of other footballers who I can't actually remember their names. So, I studied events in Manchester. So that was a job that I got when I was at university. And I worked in New York, working in hospitality as well, in corporate travel. So I lived in New York for a year, doing amazing things like taking people on helicopter flights and going to shows. And so I had like a really good career. I was working really hard and I ended up moving into the charity sector just before I left London, and I worked in fundraising, so campaigns, marketing, fundraising, stuff like that. And then me and my partner at the time decided that we just wanted to like sack it all off and go traveling. So we went to live in Switzerland. He first wanted to do a ski season and I wanted to go to South America. So we negotiated that we'd do both, but we'd do the ski season first. But then I tore my ACL after 6 weeks and I had to come home and live with my parents for like 6 months while he was on a ski season. So that wasn't the best outcome of that move. But during that time, it's actually the beginnings of my spiritual journey because I was kind of forced inward because I couldn't walk and I'd quit my job. So I didn't have any money. I was living with my parents. I think I was like 26, something like that.
Just a quick word from me, guys, and please don't skip over this. Do you want a free coffee from me? We're making some really good progress on Spotify and YouTube. I've set myself a goal of having 1,000 followers on Spotify and 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2025. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to pause this episode right now, jump into your Spotify app, click that follow button, then jump into your YouTube app, click that subscribe button. It really, really helps with the show and it would mean an awful lot to me. And as a thank you to everyone that does that, here's what I'm proposing. If you see me out and about in person, and you can show me on your phone that you are subscribed to the podcast on YouTube and following it on Spotify, I'll buy you a coffee. Can't say fairer than that. But here's the thing. You've got to be subscribed on YouTube and following it on Spotify to qualify for that free coffee. How does that sound? Cheers.
And I just realized, because I was just watching telly all the time and I was just eating food, and I was like, this has to stop. Like, I've got to do something. So I decided that I was only able to do things that was educational before 4 p.m. of every day, whether that was documentaries or like I learned Spanish, and I tried to pass my driving test. I failed 3 times, but I tried. And I got a bike, indoor bike. So I started exercising in the house. And so I started to really start to go inward, because there was nothing else. I didn't have any friends nearby me or anything. And that's when I discovered Ayurveda. And I started looking at Ayurveda, which is one of the sister sciences to Vedic astrology and Vedic meditation. And I started looking into it a little bit more, and I found it really interesting. So I went on that kind of deep dive into Ayurveda. So it's interesting because my journey started with Ayurveda to meditation, which isn't usually the route that people take in. It's like yoga to meditation. So the Ayurveda was what sort of started that. So eventually, when we made it to Australia, I came to Australia, in the back of this book I had been reading, it spoke about meditation. And I was like, okay. So within the first week of moving to Bondi, I found Bondi Meditation Centre, and I went to learn to meditate at the time with my now ex-husband. And so we learned to meditate, but I was still in the corporate world. And I was actually working for a not-for-profit here, running $1 million campaigns and sorting out problems. So I was like operations, like fix it. I went wherever there was a problem, just fix it in the company. But it was really stressful, and it's extremely toxic. And I'd been meditating for about 2 years. And I had been really, really consistent, but I was still partying and drinking a lot. And occasionally I would forget my meditation. And I'd have really bad hangover anxiety. It was crippling, at the point at which I had to have do so many different self-care things. As soon as I woke up, I'd have a hot bath with lavender oil and put the candles on and have a chamomile tea and everything, because my nervous system was just so shook. And so even though I was meditating, I still had all this stress that I was experiencing at work from all these challenging relationships and everything. And so there was a New Year's Eve where I just decided, right, this is the year where I'm going to start meditating twice a day. That's it. I'm going to make it non-negotiable and just see what happens. And that year I decided to stop drinking alcohol as well. And so I did. And within, I think it was 6 weeks, I'd quit my job and started to pursue the journey to become a life coach, actually, before becoming a meditation teacher. But I started to explore meditation teaching as well. And that was because those consistent meditations, I just felt so incredible. And I hadn't been drinking alcohol. So I wasn't going backwards, because alcohol dims your consciousness where meditation expands it. But because I was still inputting so much stress, I wasn't really giving myself a chance to come above water. So I kept thinking, oh, the meditation's going to fix everything and make everything better. But actually I needed a reset. I was burnt out. I was so burnt out, and I was working all hours, God sends. And so I just decided I'm just going to sack it off. So let's see what happens.
Let's talk about that sort of corporate burnout.
Yeah.
Mairead, so there's some people are probably going through that right now and don't necessarily know what it is. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, it's in your body. That's the thing, is burnout is a physical experience. It's so physical. So it's your nervous system. And what you need to do is it's you need to give your nervous system a hug. It's that's all you want when you're like that. But because you might be so, especially if you've not already got a practice, I had a practice, which the meditation was obviously skimming off a little bit of that surface stress. But if you don't have that, you'll be just totally wired. Your sleep's going to be messed up. You're going to have anxiety, maybe depression. You've got racing negative thoughts. You might have all sorts of physical symptoms like digestive issues, maybe migraines, skin issues. All these sorts of things are signs that your body needs to rest. And that's ultimately what you need to do in burnout, is that they say people might take time out because they're burnt out, because they need to rest. But then what are people actually doing in their rest? They're just watching Netflix, and maybe they're going to get one massage a week, something like that. But that's not really going to make a difference. You've got to change your routine. You've got to get some sun. You've got to change maybe potentially bring in a change of diet. So removing for me, it was like removing any stimulants so I could really set myself and really calm myself down. I introduced a lot of Ayurveda. Like I'm a big fan of Abhyanga oil massages, like hot Abhyanga oil massage, which you do to yourself. So it doesn't have to cost anything other than the oil. And you can do that every day. Warming your body. So when you think of like a hug, what's it like? It's like warm, it's nourishing, like it's kind of dewy almost. It makes you feel good. So it's like removing anything like that. And also removing the toxicity of the environment and the people that I was connecting with at the time. And they're all lovely people and they would be my friends, like if I was still in work now. It's just that conversations always seem to be on a level of comparison or competitiveness or something that was fueling any negativity that was there. It wasn't giving you like me a real break. And I feel like that's what happens a lot with being in the corporate. There's a lot of fueling. And so whether it's the alcohol after work or the coffee breaks or, some people, can't understand this now, but cigarette breaks. Like do people still have
It's vape breaks now. Yeah.
Vape breaks, of course, it's vape breaks. And so your nervous system, like your body, it needs time to rest and heal. And that's the thing, you can go back. Like you don't have to suddenly give up your job and become a meditation teacher or an astrologer. It's just when you take the break, you need to know what you're doing with that break and how you're going to heal, because we often go for counseling and we think we're going to think or speak our way out of it. But a lot of the time, it's actually in the body. And so you've got to do like slow breath work. Even like with the meditation, some people find it hard initially. So you can just introduce like something really soft, really calming, really nourishing, really easy, or just simple yoga asana, like to move the body, wake up with the sun, get some sun on your face, things like that. You don't want to lie on the couch and watch Netflix. That's not going to get you out of that burnout experience. You're just going to be in your thoughts the whole time.
So this period, Mairead, like that 6-week period from New Year's to when you actually like handed in your resignation and left corporate, were you like self-aware enough at the time to know that you were burnt out and that you had to do all these things or were you just so in it that you just didn't know what to do really?
I was really sick. Like at that New Year's, I went to a festival and I lost my voice and I couldn't speak. And everyone thought it's hilarious because we were at a festival. You got to like shout and everything. But I like couldn't talk, not because I was shouting, because I had glandular fever. And glandular fever is like a rundown of the system. And that's what happened. I had got myself into a really bad physical state. I had actually just got married like 9 months before. And I was not in a good mental health place from that because of the work, really. And it was in England, so there was a lot of movement around, everything like that. But I was going through a lot of emotional turmoil. I was in Saturn return, which we can talk about later. But astrologically, I was in a challenging transit. And I basically got myself really sick. I was trying to fit into a wedding dress. So I was drinking bulletproof coffee every day and eating sushi and not having breakfast. And walking to work, which was from Bondi to Potts Point every single day, back and forth, because I just wanted to look good on my wedding day. But I ruined my body.
Did it work on the wedding day? Did you get into the dress?
Great.
Yeah.
I looked great, but you can see that my soul was potentially struggling a little bit.
So, Mairead, I think you first turned to meditation or first started meditating 2016. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
So you've sort of explained like how you came across it. It was when you were sick and you sort of lent into the Ayurvedic world and that led you to Vedic meditation. When you went to Bondi Meditation Center, like what initially were you hoping to get out of the meditation?
Yeah.
Because for myself and for a lot of people that I speak to, when they start to meditate, there's usually something else going on in their life and they turn to meditation as potentially a more healthy tool that can help them get through whatever they're trying to get through. But so what was going on for you at that period?
So it's interesting. Like I said, I went with my now ex-husband and there had been a falling out with his family a couple of years before, and it tormented me. And it was just incessant. It was just this repetitive conversation that was just ongoing constantly. And I just wanted it to stop. Like I wanted to just cancel those thoughts and I just couldn't. And that's what brought me to the meditation. And later I found out, I didn't know at the time, but that's why my husband learned as well, because he was having the same experience, but we just didn't talk about it. And in the end, it was like maybe a couple of months after meditating, I suddenly realized I wasn't thinking about it anymore. And then I wasn't thinking about it at least maybe once a day instead of all day. I was on this repetitive track of this conversation, trying to think my way out of all of the different problems. And then after a few months, it started to go. Then after a while, like that just energy was just not there anymore. And there's terms in the Veda. It's called samskara and smriti. So it's when samskara is scars. So if you think of an experience that might have been a traumatic one or a negative one in some way, sometimes, most of the time, it tends to bring up like a feeling within the body. There's still some stress that's associated with that.
You get like a jolt
sometimes.
Like,
oh, it makes me feel, or you see someone and you like feel sick. It's like there's something that's unprocessed that's happening right there. And that's samskara. But once it can turn to smriti, that means that there's still memory. Like that memory is not going anywhere. You're always going to remember your ex, you're always going to recognize them, but you don't always have to have that feeling every time you see them. There's just something that's unresolved that needs to be worked through. And that's what the meditation did. Like it purified the stress out of my system so that I could think about the experience without having the bodily sensation that corresponded with it, which created freedom. And then I was like, all right, what is this? This little sound that I'm saying all the time, what's it doing? And I was like, I want to explore this a little bit more.
So Mairead, was there anything else you noticed as part, like when you first started practicing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm dyslexic. I don't really say I'm dyslexic anymore because I had that label before, but now since meditating, the whole way my mind works is completely different. My brain has sort of rewired itself.
Really?
So the things that I used to struggle with from dyslexia, like reading, I can now read all the time. Like my mum tried for years, my whole life, trying to get me to read. And she even bought me a Kindle because she said apparently dyslexics can read easier on Kindles. And I was like, nah. At the time when people had Kindles, I don't know if people have Kindles anymore. But anyway, she tried and tried, nothing worked. I went and meditated, and within a couple of years, like I read books all the time now, and it's something to do with my ability and my awareness to stay in the present moment. I think because I used to read a page and then not remember what I had just read. And so now, and I used to have to read things 3 times, so it'd be just exhausting. And now I get through books just as quick as anybody else. And so the brain can change itself. Like there's a lot of science around this now, neuroplasticity. And that is like one of the things that I noticed. And that's so before you start to meditate, you're only really using about 2% capacity of your brain. And then when you start to meditate, it starts to turn on all these other neural pathways. And so it opened up an amazing opportunity for me to be able to also write. Like I also couldn't write properly. I mean, ChatGPT's helping me out now. But, that would have been handy at school. And so, yeah, that's one of the other things. I mean, those things, anxiety, like I used to have IBS. I don't have IBS anymore, like irritable bowel syndrome, all bowel digestive issues. They were all tied to stress. So I needed to get rid of the stress from my system. I used to be so anxious. Like this would freak me out.
What, the lights and the cameras?
The lights and the cameras. Like when I was going through the 3 driving tests I was trying to do, I was vomiting. Before I was 26, like I wasn't a child. I was like vomiting before I had to go to the test. I'd get so anxious and so nervous about speaking in front of people, everything. And now it's just like, doesn't bother me.
Yeah, you speak to a room full of strangers like once or twice a week.
Yeah, once a week. Just ask me anything,
So Maria, then let's fast forward a little bit then. So started meditating 2016, got to sort of New Year's 2018, 2019 when you sort of made that commitment to yourself that you were going to start making sure you're meditating twice a day. You left corporate about 6 weeks later, middle of Feb.
Yeah.
Tell me about the day that you handed in your resignation.
So I'd already dropped down to 4 days. And again, this was another benefit of meditation, is that when I asked, my boss was like, Mairead, your 4 days is like everybody else's 5 days. She goes, actually, your 3 days are like everybody else's 5 days. Because when you meditate, you have so much more capacity. Like by the time it's 2 p.m., everyone's exhausted and you're like, I'm just going to go recharge and come back again. So then I went from dropping down to 4 days to then thinking, right, I'm going to go and have to tell her. So I actually went to her house. She was working from home in North Bondi. There was no working from home at this point. This was before COVID. And she knew it was coming. Like, I kind of been building up to it. She knew how hard it had been. She was amazing. My boss was incredible. And if ever I work for someone again, I would work for her. Like, and we just sat down and had a genuine conversation. It was like, I'm just going to go and try and pursue my passions and make something of it. But really, I just need a break. And she was totally understanding. And then I walked out. I felt so liberated. I remember being on Hall Street, I remember exactly what I was wearing as well. I was like I was at a party. I was so excited. I was like, I felt so free. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Did you have a plan, Mairead?
Not really.
No?
I wouldn't highly recommend that. But,
no. Just a bit of savings and
a bit of savings. And I was thinking maybe I'd be a coach or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But really, I was just like, get me out, because I couldn't figure it out whilst I was in there. It was too intense. Like, I don't always say that to people.
You needed the space. Yeah. In your instance, you needed the space to actually let whatever was next come to you, right?
Yeah, and it came to me exactly the same day in the afternoon.
Before we get onto that, because that's interesting as well, how did you know that having that conversation and leaving corporate, how did you know that that was the right thing to do? Because there's be a lot of people, and I'm having this conversation a lot with friends at the minute, like every person I speak to who is kind of in their mid-30s, who's maybe done the corporate thing for 10 to 15 years, like myself, a lot of them are saying, I don't see myself in corporate every year. I don't see myself in corporate for the rest of my life, or I'd love to do something else, but they just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So how did you know, Mairead?
Well, I don't think you can never know exactly, but you can know if you're unhappy. Like, are you unhappy? Yeah. Well, you got to change something. So start doing something on the side. Like, it's probably what the most obvious thing to do is, like, start doing this.
Start a podcast.
And just see where it goes, and follow something you're passionate about. Because if you are really, truly passionate about something and you know what your mission is, then you can't fail because you're motivated. It's only if you start doing something that you're kind of like half in, you're not really sure why you're doing it, or someone else told you to do it, that you're not going to be motivated enough to keep it up. But pick something you're passionate about. You're going to do it day and night, because it's your work and your life is not going to be separate anymore. It's just going to be your life. Like, and that's the thing that you do. And it's every podcast you listen to is going to be about it. Every book you read is going to be about it. Every conversation you have is going to be about it, because it's your passion, whether it's dogs or mountains, podcasting, rock climbing, whatever. Your whole life will just form around it. And then eventually you can work out what your funding mechanism and how your funding mechanism works within that. But it's like, there's no rush unless you are in a situation where mine was toxic. It was toxic and I was exhausted and I needed to recover. But I don't recommend, because I do give this advice in Vedic Astrology readings. Like, this is part of the readings where I can help people to navigate, to decide when to leave, when to not to leave, because there's good opportunities to leave when I'll see there's expansion. And then there's times where I can see, you know what, right now, like, work on the base, work on the strategy, work on the plan and do things. So take one step forward and see what happens. But you don't have to, there is a lot of advice where it's like leap without looking, right? I'm not necessarily for that, like, for everybody. I don't think that's necessarily always the best thing to do. Like, you're not leaping without looking, like, you're leaping with a very strategic plan. And I'm sure you're still enjoying yourself and you're having a good time. And yeah, maybe in your day, you might want to do this full time eventually, but you've got to fund yourself. There's some practical aspects to it. Like,
I had a conversation with my sort of coach about this, and she said that the amount of times she's seen people, obviously, to take that leap like you did, the impact that can have on your nervous system, watching your funds just go down and down and down while you've not necessarily got a plan, or the thing you're trying to get off the ground isn't enough to sort of financially sustain you.
Yeah.
And that impact it has on your nervous system, that trade-off's just not worth it.
No, it's not. It's case by case. So if you need to study something and you need to lay foundations to something, like, do you have enough to support you through that time, plus the years it's going to take you to build the profit on whatever it is you're doing? And are you creating family in that time? Like, are you wanting, that is an important question to ask, because a lot of the time it's around the time when people are thinking about families, right? Around your 30s. And so it might not feel like, because we teach a lot about charm as well, following your intuition, and in the Vedas. And so there's a lot of components that come down. And I don't think it's black and white, but I do think that more often than not, it's not leap before you have a plan.
Yeah.
It's leap with a plan.
It's interesting though, like we live in this sort of this Instagram era at the minute where, you know, depending on the algorithm that you're getting served up, you know, everyone's getting accoladed for, you know, go all in on yourself and go all in on your side hustle. And
but you are going, do you not feel like you're going all in on your podcast right now energetically?
No.
You don't energetically think you're going all in?
No.
And so what aspect of that do you think's missing? Like where is the energy?
I think my 9 to 5 takes up a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you feel like you are ready to go now?
I think I'd like the space.
Yeah.
To be able to go now. I just, you know, I couldn't financially sustain myself for a period. Yeah, we've got a couple of sponsors on the podcast, but it's nowhere near enough to maintain even half of this lifestyle.
Yeah, so I think you've got to use your intellect. Like, so there's a dream, like you'd like to, right? So that's it. So that's the beginning of the path. Like you first have the idea and now you're starting to build towards it. So, and part of that is there's a transition phase. There's always going to be a transition phase. It's like, just how intense do you want that transition phase to be? How much pressure do you want on yourself to financially support yourself with your side hustle? Or do you want to have that freedom where the pressure isn't on the creativity so you can keep exploring ideas? Like, yeah, currently you're doing the podcast, but maybe there's some other things you might want to test and trial and do. And so you actually have the safety to be able to explore different channels. Maybe it's TikTok or YouTube or, you know, whatever it is that you want to like think, maybe I could go down that way for a little bit and explore it. So you have the support for the time being. But if you pulled that out, then the pressure is on and you got to get it right. And you got to start making money as soon, unless you've got financial support.
And then it's the nervous system thing that we
And then
talk
it's the
about.
nervous system thing, which is like, I can't go and do all the things that I love doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So then you're pulling the plug on all of your actual soothing mechanisms as well.
Travel, holidays, adventure. Yeah,
exactly.
We got a bit sidetracked there, Mairead.
Yeah.
Back to the day that you resigned.
Yes.
A couple of things happened that day.
Yeah. So I was going to get my advanced technique. So in Vedic meditation, after 1 year, you can get an advanced technique. And so I resigned, but I had also booked in my advanced technique in the afternoon. So I went to get my advanced technique. And I had a really powerful meditation in that experience. And so did my teacher at the same time.
Wow.
It was like mad, but I think it was because I was so happy. I was like Kundalini, just like real, I felt really high. I was like having the best day ever. And he was like, oh, I'm actually, he was selling his house and moving to somewhere else. So he needed to find a meditation studio. And he was like, I've got a booking with a real estate to go and see somewhere. Do you want to come? It's around the corner. And I didn't have anything else to do. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll come with you. And so I came with him to have a look at the space, which it was now the first Bondi Meditation Centre. And we were like, this looks great. I was like, do you want some help? I used to be event manager. I can help you if you like. And he was like, sure. And then that was it. And from there, then after a couple of years, I went and trained to be a meditation teacher. And so I started working there as both the manager and meditation teacher.
Let's talk about the teacher training then.
Yeah.
So you went and did that in early 2020. So about a year after you've left corporate, you've been working for Bondi Meditation Centre. Teacher training, like, it always fascinates me. Like, every Vedic meditation teacher I kind of meet, so it's like I always ask them, like, how was your teacher training? So 3 months in the Himalayas. Tell me about your teacher training.
Mine was mad. Like, everyone says there's mad, but ours was the COVID year. So we went in, I think it was the 26th of January of 2020. So we were in for about 4 weeks maybe before COVID really took on. But it was interesting because the day that we went in, Matt, owner of Bondi Meditation Centre, my partner, he was flying back from India to Australia. And he missed his connecting flight and he had to get another flight. But all the flights, because he was with China Airlines, all the flights were booked. And he was like, that's weird. Why are all of the flights booked? He couldn't get on a flight. And they said it was because there was some kind of flu or something that was happening. So it was like the really early day, like the days right at the beginning. And so it was just beginning as I was going in, but nobody had any idea. And so what you do is you hand over all of your communication to, and you go into an ashram in the foothills of the Himalayas, and you're about to start meditating for 14 hours a day for 90 days straight, basically. And you have to learn Sanskrit and all these other things. And we were staying up till 1 a.m. for lectures. So we were like off it like crazy. Like,
you were off the grid. You probably didn't know.
We were off the grid, except in the evenings, like we could connect with home if we wanted to on the phones. But we were in an ashram where there were other students studying yoga, and they all just started to leave with their bags. We were like, what's going on?
Western students going back to wherever they'd sort of...
and people started going, and we were like, okay, what's happening? Why is there suddenly a surge of everybody leaving? And our teachers had to come and say, like, look, something's happening, like in the external world. And so we were being told via other people. And so they were like, look, you can contact home if you want to. So, okay, so what's going on? Like, we didn't really understand, but you're not in the right headspace. Like, you're purifying so much. We were just like eating rice and beans every day, like lentils. That was it. It was what we were doing was kind of crazy as it was. And then after a couple of weeks, it started to get really serious, and we were in India, like remote. And it was like we were given 24 hours to decide if we wanted to stay or go.
So how far into the trip?
I think about 6 weeks.
So about halfway through.
About halfway through. And so you can stay or you can go, and you don't get your money back. And it is expensive. So I was like, well, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stick this out. And applied the Vedic principles of like nature's supporting me.
Mother's taking care.
Mother's taking care. So if I'm doing something dharmic, then mother's taking care of me.
Yeah.
And so one person did decide to leave, like in the middle of the night. She was actually my closest friend on the training. So it really shook me a bit. It shook all of us, actually. And it was emotional. Like, it was really emotional. And she left, and we were all there, and the lead teacher was meant to come back and teach us. He couldn't get back into India. There was other teachers who were meant to be there, but they didn't want to be there. They wanted to go home to their families. And so we were just like 11 women. It was the first ever all women training as well, which we think was a bit of a blessing because we could like really deeply connect with each other. Mm-hmm. And so, and one person actually left in the first couple of weeks because she got really, really sick. So we'd already had the morning of one person leaving. And then this second person left. And then it was like, right, we're all just in this together. So the whole world went into lockdown, but we like kind of voluntarily put ourselves into lockdown. So then when we realized it was actually fine because we were in a really like isolated place. Like there was no chance of us getting COVID.
And there wasn't people coming and going?
They locked the doors and said one can come and go. And we were just getting food delivered to the door, and that was it. It was like whoever was there was staying and whoever was going was going. So it wasn't until the last day when they were like, right, now it's time to find your way out of here. So
Bondi Podcast listeners, this episode is sponsored by Chief Nutrition. Chief Nutrition specialise in healthy, nutritious snacks that cut the crap. My personal favourite is the collagen protein bar, which I have every day. And good news, Bondi Podcast listeners get 10% off all Chief Nutrition products when they order online. And we've got a discount code for you right there in the show notes. So go and use that. Go and check out the website and let me know what you think. Cheers. Yeah. And aside from obviously what was going on in the external world, Mairead, obviously during teacher training, at points during that, you are rounding or meditating for up to 14 hours a day. Purpose of that is just, well, lots and lots of stress release and purification. Like, why do they make teachers go through that?
Well, because it's actually a really important job. We help people, like we just discussed. I went to meditation when I was in probably my darkest time to try and get meditation to help me. So there's a responsibility that's there, that's put in the hands of the teacher, and people come to us for advice and for support. And so you want to make sure that you are in your highest state possible so that we can best serve our students. And we also offer the commitment of being the teacher for life. So whoever gives you your mantra is your teacher for life. So you want to make sure you're committed. And that's why you go through that whole rigorous process. You're not going to do it unless you're committed to teaching on the other side of it, because it's intense. So yeah, that's the main reason, is just to purify our system, get all the stress out. By the end of it, we'll come back all grounded and happy and able to serve the community.
And I hear there's like a mix of experiences from the trainee teachers, right? Some people, it can be quite a blissful experience. Some people go through a lot. We had your partner Matt on the podcast. He went through a lot.
Yes.
How was it for you?
I had one day where it was really intense purification, and it felt like I couldn't escape, like to the point at which they put me in the river, like to try and shot me back into my body again.
In the Ganga?
It's like a side stream of the Ganga, not the actual Ganga. I would have loved it to have been the Ganga, but she was connected to the Ganga. So, but yeah, they just so that I could come back into my body. It was really, I was like purifying. It was really intense. But then I had amazing, blissful spiritual experiences where I just was like in total silence, like in this white space and just suspended there. Nothing was happening, no thoughts, no sensations, just just incredible peace. And so I had a mix of both, but genuinely, I just loved it. Like, it was amazing, like, to do that. Who gets to do that? It was such a unique experience.
Amazing. How did you find your way back to Australia then from like North India?
My way back to Australia was mad. I got Matt to try and find me a flight home, which he found this guy on Facebook who said he was organising. He said he was organising flights for Australians from India because the government weren't organising any flights at this point, and he was organising it via WhatsApp. He was an ex-pilot, and he'd hired a Indonesian plane, and he'd already taken one group back to Melbourne, and he was flying back to get more people, right? And so all the other Australians were like, no way. And I was like, mother's taking care. Like, I think this is the way out. So I went and said to the teacher, I think I've got a flight tomorrow. I've just got a message to this guy on WhatsApp and got to get to Delhi somehow. And they were like, sure. So I was like, okay, let's just do this. I asked the guy who was organising it, like, why are you doing it? And he told me because God told him to. So I was like, sweet.
What sort of guy? Was he an Australian guy?
He was like an Australian guy. I think he was Indian heritage. I didn't meet him, just was chatting to him on WhatsApp. So,
was he a commercial pilot?
He was, but he had something else. I don't know. Honestly, I didn't look into it too much, which is kind of mad now if you really think about it. But when a whole flight got back, so I was like,
how many people were on the? So
hundreds.
Are we talking about like a 3x3 plane or bigger?
Yeah. Not like those A380s.
No, but like
something.
Three seats one side, three seats. Like...
There was like a middle and seats on the other side. Not a small plane. It was like quite a big plane.
And did he have staff? Or did he have?
Yeah, they had full hazmat suits.
So who were the staff that he was like?
I don't know where they came from. I was kind of, because, right, when you go into teacher training, other teachers say to you, oh, be careful, because when you come out, making decisions is really difficult.
Yeah.
You have all your decision-making power taken away from you. And they're like, when you go to the shop and you're trying to choose a smoothie, it's really difficult. And so I was trying to choose how I was getting out of a country that was completely in lockdown. And we had to get the police to escort us and to a certain point. And all the roads were empty. There was no cars on the roads in India. So imagine India, no cars on the road from the Himalayas down to Delhi.
So that's like a 5-hour drive. Maybe
but it
longer.
Wasn't. Yeah. It was like a couple of hours because there was no cars. So it was mad. And we saw what was happening in India. Like, there were so many people that were suffering so bad because they were all lining the streets, because a lot of them didn't have homes. They'd come from some remote place to come work on some construction site or something, and living in tents wherever they were working. And then the work got shut down, or the farms got shut down, something like that. So then there were just people walking. Like, I don't know where they were walking. And then people sat on this. It was so spooky. But I did actually have one of the other Australians right last minute. She was like, all right, I'm coming. And I was like, sweet. And she was my best friend. So it was good. Like, we had company and we were both, there's a picture of us just like, what are we doing? We've got our masks on and everything. And then we made it to the airport and everyone was in hazmat suits.
Did it take off from Delhi Airport?
Yeah.
How did he get clearance for that?
I have no idea. He actually did 6 flights. And so then we had to go to Melbourne, which I don't live in Melbourne, I live in Sydney. So, but I was like, I'll figure it out when I get there. So we got to Melbourne and luckily there were some flights still going from Melbourne to Sydney. But I first had to be isolated in a hotel for 2 weeks. I'd just been isolated for 12 weeks somewhere. And then they were like, now you've got to be in a hotel room by yourself for 2 weeks. And there was no window in my hotel room.
Well, you've got your mantra,
I've
Mairead.
got my mantra. So I actually did. I started a rounding challenge, which is like, for those that don't know, part of Vedic meditation. So I just went online and started just teaching meditation every day because that was the only thing I could do, and was just in the hotel room eating Mars bars.
Something your partner Matt said when he was on the podcast was teach your way out of it. So
I definitely tried to teach my way out of it anyway.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was mad. Yeah, it was a mad story.
So you eventually get back to Sydney.
Yeah.
How was that transition? Sort of.
It wasn't good. Like, I was like, what are all these things on the floor? Like, where you're meant to stand and people, you weren't allowed to cough, like, near people. I had no idea because there were all these rules that people were observing and the society, everything had changed. It was so trippy. It was like a dream, like a nightmare. Like, I'd left and the world was one way. And I came out and the world was, it was like a movie. That's what it was like. And then I came to Bondi and it was just weird. And I moved into a flat by myself for the first time in my whole life. I'd never lived by myself. And so I felt quite isolated, actually. Like it was actually a really hard time. Like even though I'd been through the meditation, you think you're coming out fully enlightened and everything's going to be blissful and amazing. But the collective was heavy. I had plans to work for BMC, for Bondi Meditation Centre, but the centre was closed, so I couldn't teach. I couldn't make any money. Yeah. And I'd spent all my money and I'd gone to India with $1 in my bank. So I was like trusting nature to get me back. And it did, because it said you could get access to your superannuation. So that's how I got back.
Yeah. You're actually someone that probably needed that, Mairead. I
really needed it.
I've got friends that took the full 10,000 out and they were employed like the entire time. They were just like, oh, money from the super, great.
Yeah,
get that.
It's like bonus cash. But no, I actually needed it to survive because the centre was shut and we couldn't work.
That must have been a bit strange, Mairead, because you've probably went on that teacher training with an expectation that, hey, when I get back to Bondi, I'm going to start teaching, 10 people a week to meditate. And then you get back and, oh, no, you're going to have to wait because the world's pretty weird right now.
Yeah, and we had to wait quite a while. Then we went through lockdown again in Bondi, in Sydney, like later on in 2021. And so it was like just as we were starting to reopen, we went back and crashed again. And just at a time when everybody really needed meditation.
But that, am I right in saying, Mairead, you kind of used that to your advantage, that period, those lockdowns, because that's when you sort of first started looking into Vedic astrology?
That is correct. Yeah, you've done your research. That is exactly what I did. I just dove deep and did a 6-week intensive course at home with my teacher who lived in India. So I did it online and it was 6 hours a day of lectures online, 6 days a week for 6 weeks. And I did that in 2021 and it was amazing. Changed my life.
So let's set the scene for the next part of the discussion. What is Vedic astrology and how does it differ to like Western astrology or traditional astrology that people might be a bit more familiar with?
Yeah, so I won't get into the technicalities of the difference between Western and Vedic.
Okay.
You can just ask ChatGPT the difference on the technical parts. But the general overall difference is like there are some things that are similar, Like the signs are the same, the planets are the same, the characteristics of the planets and the signs are the same from Aries to Pisces that we're used to seeing in the newspaper. But the way that it is calculated is different. So they're two different systems to measure the same pattern in nature. That's what astrology is doing. It's an observational science. And some people might argue that it's not a science at all, but it is based on observation. And so when you look at the sky, whether with a telescope or the naked eye, you can see that the moon is moving, and it's moving through the sky. And so what ancient seers, rishis, teachers did was they observed the patterns over thousands of years to see what was happening both to the collective and to individuals when planets were placed in different areas of the sky. That's ultimately what it is. So it's observational science. And this is the thing, we can see very similar, like the moon has an effect on water, and it also has an effect on menstrual cycles. And it has an effect on our mind. Like when there's a full moon, our dreams can be really active and quite wild. And so there is a connection with the moon. And because it's so close, it's easy for us to see that association. But then there are connections with us as individuals and the planets, and I only use all the way out to Saturn. And so in Western and Vedic, there are just some other different ways of measuring things that vary. And so in Vedic astrology, there's a bit more detail. It's older than Western astrology. It's more ancient.
Are you a small business or solo entrepreneur who wishes you had more hours in the day? Have you ever thought about hiring a virtual assistant? Well, the Bondi Podcast is sponsored by Remote-E. Remote-E specialise in connecting small businesses and entrepreneurs with the best virtual assistant talent in the Philippines to do all those jobs that you don't want to, so you can focus on growing and scaling your business. If this is something you're interested in, the Bondi Podcast can get you 2 weeks absolutely free with Remote-E. Just go to the website, remote.com.au/contact and enter the referral code Bondi for 2 weeks absolutely free. That's 2 weeks absolutely free. Cheers. Why are you so passionate about it, Mairead? What is it about Vedic astrology that sort of has drawn you in?
I mean, it's a never-ending knowledge as well, and I love learning. That's one aspect of it. So for me, it's just like feels that urge to learn something new. But it's fascinating because I never knew anything about it, and you can see it as something really esoteric and really mystical, and it's not really for me, and I'm not really into that sort of stuff,
Bit woo-woo.
Yeah. Whatever. But the number of people that cry in my sessions because they feel a sense of relief that either I tell them something about themselves where they just feel so inspired or lit up by the fact that there's that potential for them because maybe they lacked some belief. So it's like a validation in some way. Now, I'm not there stroking people's egos. I'm just sharing what I see in the chart and mirroring that back because the chart is you. Like that is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a picture of the moment that you were born, of the sky, and that is telling me information about who you are and your journey in this lifetime. And so some people also go through a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. And sometimes I can say, it's ending. That's in the past. That's not happening anymore. You don't, and the relief and like the surrender that they can let go and purify. So for me, it really is an amazing tool to help people navigate change. That's like my favorite thing to help people do is navigate change, whether it's something that's challenging or some new creative project or redirection. It can really help to inform people of that, but also help people to heal. Like it's a healing tool as well. So I've thought about it a lot. I've gone through my own journey with astrology, like totally embarrassed by the fact that I say like I'm an astrologer because I'm still not quite confidently embodying it myself.
Is there a bit of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, it's a bit of imposter syndrome. Oh, but also there's just so much judgment around it. And so there's so much judgment around it where people just be like, oh, yeah, we're. And I'm like, well, give me a birth diamond, I can tell you.
And I'll make you cry.
Yeah, and I'm going to make you cry. But I just think that's just showing something that there is something profound about this knowledge that can really service people and it can really support people. And I don't use it as a mechanism tool for prediction of being like, you're going to meet your partner at this point. One thing that I really love to study is conception. Like and support people through conception journeys for having children. I can see I've had success in seeing when people are going to have children.
So what's the link there, Mairead, between Vedic astrology and having kids?
They're different placements and different transits. So how the planets are moving within your personal astrology and what's happening in the sky right now will trigger conception in the chart for a particular period of time. And sometimes it shows there isn't any for a period of time. So some people try to have a kid for years and there's no luck, and then they might fall pregnant years later. And you can see when there isn't, the energy isn't there, like nature's not supporting it right now, but it's going to support it later. Or sometimes I can see it's really supporting it now. So like, go, like now, or go in a year. That's going to be an amazingly fertile time for you to be able to do it. And I just like that because a lot of people struggle with fertility, and people race into IVF a lot of the time because they think that they're not fertile, there's something going wrong. And then you hear these stories about they then like have unprotected intercourse after having a baby and they get pregnant, you know, after they've gone through IVF this whole time, because then naturally the body wasn't ready at that particular time, but it was then ready later on. And why is that? Well, some of the planets and transits can show that. So there's lots of ways you can use it. And that is one tool where I would use it in a prediction way. But otherwise, I'm using it as like a personal development tool, you know, and looking for, in your situation, be like, okay, when's the best time for you to make your move into making this a full-time gig?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really interested in that angle, Mairead, about it sort of being used as a tool to help people. You give a few examples there. I'm sure you've used it on yourself to help yourself, right?
Well,
So I wouldn't
every
ask you to divulge any examples that of your clients that you've helped, but maybe like to help sort of bring the whole thing alive. Can you sort of use an example from your personal life?
Yeah, I can use myself or my partner Matt. Like, I know that he wouldn't mind either. You know, there's been some legal issues that he's had recently, which has prevented him from pursuing something creatively, a project creatively. And although it's been pretty heartbreaking for us, especially at a time when we've just had a baby, it would be nice to have the financial support. But I was able to show him where the teaching was. And I'm able to say, like, look, right now, it's not a period of expansion. You're in a restrictive period, and this is a time you're going to have to work hard for reward. So it's patience. But I could also see in his area of career, there's like a house that represents the career. There was something that was changing, like some kind of a detachment, something shifting. And I was thinking that's weird because he's doing his Dharma. He's a meditation teacher. He absolutely loves it and he's brilliant at it. And he loves spending all his time studying Vedic knowledge. So what's changing? Well, what's changing is that this has forced him to go part-time and me to go into work part-time. And we're looking after our baby boy 50-50. And it is the best thing that could have ever happened. Like, our little boy is getting the both of us half a day each. And that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't have had this huge challenge. And so it was a gift. So thank you to those that pursued it, because it means that he's now getting this time. And you see, I think it was Gabe and Mate I saw recently say, like, the one thing that he regrets was not spending more time with his children. And it's something you hear all the time, and that is having the best time. I mean, there's moments obviously with parenting, but he thinks this is his happiest time of his life, but he's actually being challenged the most he's ever been challenged. So for me, the real reward comes when there are challenging transits and people come, and I can be like, right, you need to be patient. There's a long-term thing that's happening right here. What about if you divert your attention and you put it into this area of life? Because what we're trying to do is we have attachments to certain things that are going to make us feel a certain way. Like, we want to achieve certain acquisitions that we might want, certain goals that we might have, and we're so attached to them. But if nature's not supporting it at that particular time, then you're missing out on something else that's meant to be happening right now. And that thing may happen or may not happen in the future. So it's really about applying the Vedic wisdom, you know, of letting go of attachments, coming into the present moment and seeing what's here, what's now, enjoying the process. And then what's actually happened, using Matt's example, is he's realized that he needs to change the and alter and add and make some movements around what he was already planning on doing. He's like, actually, I'm going to pivot it slightly and do it a bit differently, because he realized with the space, he's now like, I can do this better in a different way.
Interesting. Now looking forward to seeing what Matt brings out.
Yeah.
Mairead, you sort of touched on it earlier about people studying what Vedic astrology is kind of doing on the collective.
Yes.
And to sort of focus on that for a second, like if I think about what's going on in the world right now, it feels pretty chaotic, right? You've got Trump in the US saying lots of things, doing lots of things, lots of stuff going on in the Middle East between Israel, Palestine, Israel, Iran. You've got Russia, Ukraine. Is there anything going on from a Vedic astrology perspective that sort of gives that a little bit more context?
I mean, there are always different challenging transits that are going on, but
this one feels particularly like I can't I'm 35 now, and I can't think of a time when it's been a bit as crazy as this.
Yeah, so every country actually has its own chart,
right?
So like we have our personal astrology based on the moment that we took our first breath, and every country has their own chart based on when that country was established. And America is going through a general period of transformation through like a 7-year period, and they're right in the peak of it right now, in a really karmic period where there's a lot of karma, which means that there's a lot of action and patterns that aren't necessarily evolutionary. There's a lot of lessons that need to be learned. There's a lot of attachment that's there. And so that you can see, because in Bondi, that energy isn't here.
No.
Right. So yeah, it's happening in the world, but it's not happening to us here. And so every other country like Israel, they all have their own charts. And there are certain transits that are happening, affecting those particular countries, that is activating that. Now, I'm not an expert in collective astrology. It's not what I study. It's not what I'm into, because I really think that the impact comes from the individuals that are involved. You change the consciousness, the state of the individual, and you can have an impact on the world. So focus on yourself, focus on what action you can take, and whether that's action like towards supporting a cause in some way like that, great. But ultimately, if we can uplift the whole consciousness, then that's going to make a collective difference. And so that's what Vedic meditation can Vedic meditation and Vedic astrology can do for individuals. So we have personal astrology charts, like Trump has a chart, right? And in it, there'll be certain placements of where the planets are. So, for example, the sun represents authority figures and power and ego. And when the sun is imbalanced, so when you're not coming at it with an awakened consciousness state, you can take advantage of that energy that he's naturally been born with. But when you look at the chart, you have to take into consideration the consciousness state of the individual and how they're using like the ingredients, like what they're going to do with the ingredients they've been given at birth is based on their consciousness state. And so someone else that might have a strong sun, the planet sun in their chart, they might use that for a greater cause. Like you see a lot of powerful people with that placement because you need that energy, but their values, like that's what dictates how you're going to use that energy. What are my values? What are my principles? And so as an astrologer, I can help say to someone, look, you're about to go into this period where you're going to have strong sun energy, which means that you're going to feel a lot of power, and you're going to want to move into an authority or leadership position. And I'll try and advise them to take advantage of like the higher potential rather than the lower potential, which would potentially be conflict and competition and stuff like that. So you have to come at astrology with wisdom, not just this kind of mathematical analysis and you just go like spit out the same answer for everybody. Like you need to bring the wisdom of the Veda into the astrology as well.
Well, Mairead, let's bring some wisdom from the Veda into the podcast. So you're actually going to do a Vedic astrology reading on me.
I'm going to try, yeah.
We're going to try. So I've given you my date of birth, time I was born, place I was born.
Yes.
What have you sort of done then in the background? Like, I'm interested to know a little bit about your process.
So you put that into a machine and it spits out the
ChatGPT,
chart.
yeah.
And so no, there are astrology apps. Don't use ChatGPT. I've definitely explored that option and it's not accurate right now. Anyway, it's not accurate. And so you are a Sagittarius rising. So Sagittarius rising is your it's your first house. So there are a few key placements when you're looking at somebody's core personality. So everyone has like a core personality, right? And so that's formed by your birth chart, your natal chart, like it's a fixed thing. But then what then gets activated and kind of tells your journey of where you go in life with that personality and how you grow is based on the transit. So what's happening right now in the sky and how that then overlays your chart. So Saturn return, which most people know about, is a notorious transit that happens around when you're 28 to 31. And that's when Saturn comes back into the sign of where Saturn was in your birth chart. That's a transit. And we have returns of all the planets. Like we have a Jupiter return every 12 years. We have Venus return every year, Mars every 2 years. Like they all move constantly. And so there's transits that we use. And then there are other bits that we use that basically turns a light on in the chart somewhere. And so that's where the focus is. So for a period of time, you might be really into sport, and then suddenly overnight, it's like, I'm going to be a banker. And then you're a banker, and then suddenly I'm going to be a podcaster. And so what says that journey, because that potential is always within the chart, what says when and where it's going to happen is the movement of what's happening in the sky right now. So all these transits. And so, but then we have the core personality. So what makes you have the desire at some point to have a podcast is based on your birth chart, your personal astrology. So you're a Sagittarius rising. I've got it written down here so I don't forget. So you're a Sagittarius rising. So this the rising signs defines how the world sees you. And so that is your natural traits that kind of show up. And so philosophical is one trait of a Sagittarius.
Okay.
It's ruled by Jupiter. So you're very driven by wisdom, by higher learning. You're a seeker of truth. You're into belief systems and exploring things on more of a philosophical level, which is obviously being demonstrated right now within this conversation. So that's very top level Sagittarius. They're also very freedom loving and adventurous and love to travel. You live in a country that is not your birth country, so that suggests that's accurate as well, but can be very optimistic, like really nice, joyful, optimistic characters are Sagittarius. So the thing is, though, what's interesting with your Sagittarius is you actually, the moment you were born, you also had Saturn and Mercury placed in Sagittarius. So you're not typical Sagittarius energy. Like there's something else that's kind of mixing that's going on there. And Mercury has the energy of communication, of intellect. Saturn is a spiritual teacher. It's an energy of discipline, and it can be, like I said, it can be restrictive. So it's all sitting in your first house, which is like you. It's like your personal brand, your identity. So it says that these two planets play a key role, as well as Sagittarius. It plays a key role in your life. So spirituality plays a key role in your life, and Mercury, communication, plays a key role in your life. And so these are things that you're naturally going to be drawn to and interested in within your life, right?
Consultant and podcaster.
Okay,
so yeah.
Consultant and podcaster. But because Saturn delays, but it always delivers, it means that your potential actually is probably going to be later in life, most likely after your Saturn return, which is around about now.
Okay.
And so there can be some delays in your personal identity because that's the first house. So when you really know yourself, like what your values are and what you stand for, has probably taken a bit of time for you to get to until around about now, like in your early 30s. That's when you probably had that kind of awakening, so to speak. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I probably all coincided with I started meditating, which was just over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And probably since that point, that's sort of when I've really sort of honed in on, I think anyway, that I've maybe got a bit of a better understanding of who I am or who I want to be.
Yes.
And again, coincided with starting the podcast. a few months after I started meditating.
Yeah.
As well.
And so then so there's a few like kind of traits of the chart, but you're also you were born with your moon in Aries, which makes you a determined, dynamic, kind of fiery, passionate, slightly impulsive person sometimes, depending in certain areas of your life. You might make decisions quickly, but I would say adventurous is very a strong trait of Aries. And so, and then you also have your sun. I can't remember where your sun was. So sun is the planet which most people are looking at when they're looking at, oh yes, your sun is in Scorpio. This makes you very spiritual. This is interesting. So what I'm giving you now is like bits of flavor and insight into personality. But what's relevant right now is what's being activated. So, and that's with the transits. And then it's also this other system called the Dasha system, which gets a bit technical, but I won't get into that right now. But there are some key things. Like I said to you before this, I said, were you thinking about maybe a career change around about 18 months ago, something like that? And you said this is when you started the podcast, which is interesting. So there was an energy moving through the same one that Matt's just started. I said that moving through your house of career 18 months ago, which was suggesting that there was going to be some kind of change that was going to move you more into alignment with your values, or move something that's going to be a bit more spiritual. So something more philosophical maybe that's happened. And you started the podcast. So you can see that's being activated. Now, that's ended and it's actually moved in. There's an energy that has shifted with that's moved into a place where now is a great time for you to invest in your passion projects. Like you should be testing and trialing everything out. Don't leave your career right now. Like that's not the energy, because right now you're in an amazing time for actually doing really well with communications and podcasts. Like this is a great period. But at the end of the year, you're about to go deep dive into spirituality. So from the end of December, for about 7 months, you go into a deeply spiritual time, which is going to be amazing for your healing. So this is where I would say to you, like, do all your planning and like keep going with the podcast, explore more channels, reach out and network, like really use that Mercurian energy I was talking about, intellect, everything, to really like plan and strategize what you want to do, But then come December, for about 7 months, is a time for you to work on some own personal healing and growth, maybe deepen your meditation practice. You're going to have access to more mystical experiences. Like you were telling me about some things that happened in India with your meditation. Like this is a great time to work on any conditioned behavioral patterns that you think might be holding you back. Like it's a really, really good 7-month time to go deep, go on retreat, go on pilgrimages, go and do something solo, maybe like if you like to go on a solo camping trip or something, reflection, like really go, like really journal a lot. Maybe if you find something coming up, go and counsel, but meditate. It's an amazing portal kind of opening for you. You have a very spiritual chart. Like it's interesting. Like it's not obvious. Like if someone was to meet you, they probably wouldn't initially think that you were spiritual to begin with, but it's sort of hidden. Like, and it's going to get stronger and stronger and then really activate around 2028. So the way that whatever it is that you decide to do and deliver is going to have a real spiritual, philosophical undertone to it. And it should do, because you're going to be able to access some really highly spiritual experiences probably during that time and connect to a lot of foreign cultures as well. But that energy, so the period you're going in 2028 is suggesting you're going to do something independent by that point. But if I just come back to, like I said, there's that spiritual period at the beginning of 2026. And then in that from July 2026, then you're going to have amazing support for expansion and finances. And that would be a time when I'd be like, right, if the foundations are laid and you're feeling confident with what you've got going, then you could start to explore, okay, what's my out strategy looking like from this point? Because you might find that you're going to be getting a lot of opportunities that comes. Now, there then is like a transition phase that you're going through in 2028. So I would be like, make the move before 2028 or make the move after 2028. There's something that's going to be happening.
So say that again.
So in 2028, you're in a transition phase. You're moving from a moon phase to a Mars phase. It's quite significant, and it's going to move you more into doing something more independent rather than being in the corporate world. Like I can see that happening, but even make your move to independence before 2028 or after, because it might be a time when you want some more grounded security, not so much change happening.
That's interesting.
Why?
Obviously I'm sort of at an age now where you start to think about family and stuff like that. So it's actually interesting because my girlfriend and I, we had a conversation fairly recently, like, you know, let's put a approximate time frame on this without putting too much pressure on.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, sort of 3 years was sort of
2028.
Yeah.
It's funny. Well, so I was going to say to you, so the way you get joy in your life is through your creative pursuits. You're going to get a lot of joy through your creative pursuits. And you definitely have the capacity to make this a success, like in the chart, for sure. And that potential is definitely coming later. But the House of Children is activated. So there is a period in which, like, I would have to see your partner's chart as well to tell. But it would suggest you're going to have children, like, and you're going to get a lot of joy from being a parent and with your children as well. So it's really positive. So family is definitely there, but the family will help you grow and help you learn. You actually learn a lot through relationships. That's where your most growth happens, is in relationships. And you're going through a really nice relationship transit right now at the moment.
So what does that mean? Like, what's going on there?
So there's real positivity for you to meet and connect with not just romantic partners. So your romantic partnership, there might be something that's deepening there, like a wisdom that's kind of coming through, like the commitment being made, discussions about children, you know, but also business partnerships. This next year is a fantastic opportunity to get sponsors, you know, connect with other people. Like you've got kind of like an auspicious energy, like a positive energy that's there, that's being activated, that might suggest you might make some really good connections. So, but you're in for a period of a lot of growth, which would make sense aligned with the direction that you want to go in. But you have the potential in the chart to do something independent for sure.
Good to know. So I'm interested in this 7-month sort of spiritual period, Mairead, and you said, like, what can I do to sort of navigate that? Well, it's keep up the meditation practice, probably go on a few, you know, round a bit more. So go on rounding retreats, on pilgrimage, if possible. How will that sort of tie in with other big things that are going on in my life? Sort of, I'm thinking my 9 to 5, my the podcast, and my relationship would be like the other big areas in my life. So how?
Well, I would be thinking, like, with your relationship, you might find that you might be a bit more detached at that time. Right now, there's a bit more of a supportive energy that's there where you're feeling quite connected. But so this is a good opportunity to say, like, during this time, I might be doing a lot more internal reflection. You know, so if I'm feeling a bit distant, like there's a bit more of a distant energy that's there, then that's what's going on. Like I'm working on some stuff internally within myself, you know. And the same with the podcast. Like the way that you could bring this into the podcast is bringing more vulnerable content, like being more vulnerable in that sense, like going down. So what's happening is your 8th house is being activated, and you have a strong 8th house. You actually have the same placement as Matt in the 8th house. The 8th house is actually tantric knowledge, Ayurvedic knowledge, astrology knowledge, it's Vedic knowledge, it's hidden sciences, it's like things that are hidden. And so that's why any kind of psychology work, trauma-based work, shadow work, anything like that, to really pull out what's there that's holding you back. Because that's the thing, we all have things that are suppressed, but when that 8th house kind of gets unlocked, some of those things like come up to the surface. But if we lean in to letting go, like it's the energy. It's like the energy of needing to let go, needing to shed, because you're about to be reborn the other side. Like this amazingly more of a material energy that's happening the other side, a Venusian energy, a Venus energy. So before you go into that next phase, there's like a bit of a clearing and a bit of a shedding that's happening. So you can still carry on with your 9 to 5, but you're going to want to make sure you do your meditation before you go in and your meditation after. And you might find that you are feeling a little bit more of that discomfort. You know, you're aware of the cycles, the 3 primary laws of nature, which are creation, maintenance, and destruction. And when we're in maintenance too long, you start to feel that discomfort of that destruction. And in the last 18 months, that's probably got more uncomfortable. As I was saying, that transit, that triggered that discomfort, being like, okay, I think now's the time to start really looking at what I'm doing. And so that little phase is kind of a little bit more of that towards the end of the year and during that period that I mentioned, those 7 months. Yeah.
So now that, so you've told me that this is coming, right? Like, would the advice be hold off on any of that sort of trauma work or other spiritual work? Just hold off and do it in that period, or like lean in now?
Lean in now, so that you're kind of ready for going deeper ultimately. Like, and that's the thing is so let's talk about Saturn return. Like, everybody knows Saturn return and thinks of it as a notoriously challenging transit. Yeah, it is if you don't know anything about it and you don't know that it's coming. But if you know that it's coming, then you can navigate it. Like, if you know that it's going to rain, you're going to bring an umbrella, right? It changes the whole experience. It doesn't stop it from raining, but you've then got this protection that you've got. And so that's the same thing with all these transits, is that you know it's coming. So you know when your energy suddenly, it's like, okay, things aren't working the same as they were working. Like, why is it not working? You don't need to panic. Like, don't panic. Like, right now you're in this really strong Mercury creative phase. And so, and that's not really, the creative aspect of it isn't really going to go away. It's just that you're just going to go inward for a little bit and then you're going to come out and you're going to expand more again. Just, I think what you're going to do is you're going to start to connect a little bit deeper and start to bring that unique spiritual flavor into your teachings.
Thank you,
exciting.
Yeah, well, obviously I went into that with, well, I always go into things like that with a healthy dose of skepticism, but like an open mind and a bit of curiosity as well. But I enjoyed that, and there's certainly like a few bits and pieces there that you said that sort of resonated, and a few timelines sort of make sense as well. Interesting stuff. Mairead, I'll not keep you for too much longer. There are a few other things I wanted to sort of touch on in the podcast. You've recently become, as you mentioned, a mother for the first time. My question to you is, like, how have you incorporated some of this Vedic wisdom and Vedic astrology into your parenting, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's a big question. Like, it's definitely informing so much of my parenting, from the choice of to give birth at home unmedicated, because I was really wanting to have that experience. It was gnarly. Like, it was crazy. It was not what I was expecting. It kind of totally cracked me open. It was madness. But the meditation obviously probably helped me through that time, and the breath work that I also teach as well, like helping me to come back to my breath just through that pain and everything, and just the trust in nature and using mantra. Like, I used mantra during my labor. It was crazy. I started singing spontaneously mantra, and for a whole 7 minutes, my contractions, I had no pains. I don't know if the contractions stopped, but I'd been going for 15 hours of intense labor, and for 7 minutes there was no pain while I was singing. It was just crazy. So there was that kind of practical application to it. And we sing mantra to Freddie. Like, the first thing he heard was mantra as well, that he heard, which is sweet. But also, just, you know, those first few months of motherhood is the toughest thing. Like, I can't even explain it. Your mental health, like all the hormones, everything, you're sat there, like, half of it is just, you go a bit stir crazy by yourself the whole time, because you're just in your head and you're trying not to watch telly and you're trying not to go on your phone and, you know, all these things, and you're figuring out this new way of life, and you're like, I'm not going to be able to travel anymore. Like, so there was a lot of applying the knowledge to my thoughts and what I was thinking and my growth, and being like, becoming aware of when I was going down negative thought patterns. And it was like, right, get outside, move my body, get some sun, talk to people, you know, come out of, I would notice, because you're so tired, you also go like, you kind of disassociate a lot. I definitely had, like,
you go a bit more internal,
or you just kind of just check
disconnect.
out. Yeah,
yeah,
disconnect.
right.
Like, I checked out a lot, which I didn't expect. And so you just check out, and it's funny, you come back and feel like, oh, what am I going to be doing? Like, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So the meditation, like doing the meditation when you're not getting any sleep, has been just a lifesaver, because it's so healing. Yes, I fall asleep in every single meditation, but it's still really rejuvenating me as well. And then just I think naturally, just like I feel quite calm around him, and Matt's obviously a meditator as well, so we're both very calm and we're not reactive. And I think that's just going to be so beneficial for him as he grows up, that we've checked our states. You know, we've got regulated emotional states and regulated nervous systems, and that's what he's experiencing. And yeah, we have our challenges, like everyone in their first year of parenting, but it's also incredible. Like, the other day was amazing. We were lying in bed and Freddie leant over and gave me a kiss. Like, he's 7 months. He like pulls your hair and he goes like that. He gave me a kiss. And then it was like he knew, like Matt was like, oh, what about me? And he just turned and he leant over and he like pulled Matt in and gave him a kiss. And it was such an intense present moment experience. It was so intoxicating. Like, it was like oxytocin off the charts. Like, this is amazing. Like, it was just, there was nothing else that was ever going to top that. You could just see he had worked out somehow at 7 months, like, oh, I've left him out, I'm going to give him a kiss too. And it was just such a beautiful expression of the nature of being in its purest form, because babies are that before they go through all of their conditioning. And it was just magic. It's like been magic moments like that all the time. So it's so special. It's just the best. I love it.
So with two Vedic meditation teachers as parents, how do you think Freddie's childhood would be different to your and Matt's? Coming from like the classic
he's
British.
going to spend a lot of time in ashrams. That's probably what's going to happen. He's going to India in December with us for the first time.
Are you going back to the ashram that we went?
We could different ashram.
Oh, okay.
It's not been released yet. It's a secret new offering that I'm designing at the moment. So
we got a little teaser at Medi the other night.
Yeah. Okay. So it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Yeah, we're going for, I'm just going to tell you because I don't know when this is out, but I'll probably announce it by then. And we're going for a 21-day retreat. We're going to run a 21-day retreat over Christmas and New Year in southern India in an Ayurvedic wellness center. So it's going to be Vedic meditation and Ayurveda together. So it's going to be intense.
Rounding in there as well?
Rounding, loads of rounding. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And Freddie's coming with us. So he's going to have a very different life. He's a Sagittarius rising as well.
Okay.
Yeah, very philosophical individual. And you might think, oh, like, it's kind of a bit cliche. Is he going to be a teacher because we're teachers? But his chart would suggest he would be.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it actually does. And so, of course, I've used his astrology to help me. I don't look into it too much, but it's a bit fun just to have a little look.
How old do you think he'll be when you sort of teach him how to meditate, or you give him a mantra?
Well, he has an interesting transit that's coming when he's around 6 years old, which I think is going to start him on his like quite an early path to asking some big questions, like, why am I here? You know, those sorts of questions. And I'm saying that not because I'm just like a parent that thinks my kid's amazing, but because I can just see in the chart that's what he's going to do probably. Spiritually, that's what I'm thinking, is going to go down the spiritual route very early. But I think he's going to be a bit of an unconventional kid. Like, I mean, we go to group meditations weekly. He pops up sometimes. Like, it's a bit of an odd experience, you know. But who knows? Maybe he'll be a footballer.
Or a DJ like his dad.
Or a DJ like his dad. Whatever it is. I don't care as long as he's having fun and he's happy and he brings me along for the ride sometimes, then that would be nice.
Amazing. Mairead, my final question, thank you for so much for coming in for a chat. I've really enjoyed it. I can't believe it's been like nearly an hour and a half. there's been a lot of change in your life, if you sort of over the last 10 years or so, like from corporate and married to Vedic meditation, Vedic astrology, spirituality, now being a mum. How do you know that you're on the right path?
Because I feel alive. Like you just said, it's an hour and a half. Is it an hour and a half? That's mad. Like talking about my favorite subject, astrology, I must be on the right path. Having moments like that with my son. Is there decisions in my life that I regret? Yeah, like, is there things I could have done better? 100%. Is there some suffering I would have liked to avoid, some pain I like to avoid? Yes, definitely. But I feel now like I'm me, like I know who I am, and I could go back to corporate tomorrow and that wouldn't change who I am. What I do doesn't change my state of being. I know who I am and I'm happy with who I am. And I'm also happy if people accept it or they don't accept it. That's how I feel, and that means I know I'm in the right place because I'm in alignment with myself. Like, it's not about the external world, it's about your internal world. And I feel content and happy in the small moments, just the cups of tea and the different things like that. So if I had to give up astrology tomorrow, then yeah, it'd be a bit rubbish, but I'm sure I'd be finding something else. But ultimately, I think the sign that you're in the right place is when you feel like you want to get out of bed in the morning.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Mairead, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.